Let's talk about a question people seem to love. It's a simple one. Who wins in a fight? A modern human or a Neanderthal? It sounds like a comic book matchup. A caveman versus an astronaut, maybe. But it's a real question about our own family tree. These weren't monsters or dumb brutes. They were another kind of human. They lived and breathed and hunted on the same planet we did for a very long time. And for thousands of years, we lived alongside them. We even had children with them. That's a fact. Most people walking around today with ancestry outside of Africa have a little bit of Neanderthal DNA in them. So this isn't a fight between a person and an ape. It's a fight between two different, very capable, very intelligent types of human. To figure this out, we can't just guess. We have to look at the evidence. We have their bones. We have their tools. We have the places they lived. And from that, we can piece together a picture of what they were. And we can compare it to what we are. First, let's put the Neanderthal in the ring. What are we looking at? Forget the old drawings of a stooped, hairy ape man. That image comes from one of the first Neanderthal skeletons ever found. It belonged to an old man, and he was riddled with arthritis. He was hunched over because he was in pain, not because his species was primitive. A healthy Neanderthal stood up straight, just like you and me. But they were not built like you and me. A male Neanderthal was shorter than the average modern man, maybe 5 feet 5 inches tall. That sounds like a disadvantage. But they were incredibly stocky. They had broad shoulders and a huge barrel-shaped chest. Their bones were thicker and denser than ours. Their joints were bigger. Everything about their frame screams power. This wasn't a lanky basketball player's body. This was a powerlifter's body, a wrestler's body. Their center of gravity was low. That makes you hard to knock over. It gives you a stable base for pushing and pulling. In any kind of grappling, that is a massive advantage. Imagine trying to tackle a fire hydrant. That's the kind of stability we're talking about. And then there's the muscle. We can't see their muscles, of course. They're long gone. But we can see where the muscles attach to the bones. The attachment points on Neanderthal bones are huge. They are rough and pronounced. This tells paleontologists that their muscles were massive. They had powerful backs, powerful shoulders, powerful legs. Their arms were particularly strong. The bone for the upper arm, the humerus, was incredibly robust, and the place where the bicep attaches suggests they had enormous pulling strength. Their forearms were also heavily muscled. Think about their hands. Their finger bones were thicker than ours. Their palms were wider. All the evidence points to a grip strength that would have been crushing. It would be like shaking hands with a hydraulic press. In a fight, a grip like that is a weapon. Once a Neanderthal got a hold of you, you probably weren't getting away. So, just on the raw physical stats, the Neanderthal is a beast. Shorter, yes. But wider, thicker, and almost certainly much, much stronger than the average modern human. Maybe even stronger than our strongest modern humans. We're talking about a level of brute force that few people today would ever encounter. Why were they built like this? Their environment and their lifestyle shaped them. They lived in Ice Age Europe and Asia. It was a cold, hard world. A stocky, compact body is better at conserving heat than a long, lanky one. It's simple physics. They were adapted to the cold, and their lifestyle was brutal. They hunted big game, not from a distance with a high-powered rifle. They hunted mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant cave bears up close. Their main weapon was a heavy stone-tipped spear, but this wasn't a spear for throwing. The aerodynamics are all wrong. It was a thrusting spear, a lance. That means to kill a bison, you had to get right next to it and drive that spear into its side with all your body weight. You had to hold on while it thrashed and fought. This is an incredibly dangerous way to live. Neanderthal skeletons often show healed fractures and injuries. Their injury patterns are a lot like modern rodeo riders. It's a life of violent, close-quarters physical trauma. This kind of life builds a certain kind of person. It requires immense physical strength, courage, and probably a very high tolerance for pain. A Neanderthal wouldn't be shocked by violence. Violence was just Tuesday. So in a straight-up fight, no weapons, just two people in a room, the Neanderthal has some huge advantages. Raw power, a low center of gravity, a crushing grip, a body built to withstand and deliver punishment. An average modern man, even one who's in decent shape, would probably be overwhelmed very quickly. It would be like the middleweight boxer trying to wrestle a grizzly bear. The sheer difference in physical power would be too much to overcome. The Neanderthal would get his hands on you, and that would be the end of the fight. But that's not the whole story. The fight isn't always in a small room, and brute strength isn't the only thing that wins a fight. Now we have to look at the other corner of the ring. Us. Homo sapiens. What do we bring to the table? At first glance, we look weak in comparison. We're taller, but we're leaner. Our bones are lighter, our frames are more gracile, more delicate, we don't have that same look of condensed power. An office worker who spends 8 hours a day at a desk seems like a poor match for a creature that wrestled rhinos. But our build isn't a weakness, it's a different kind of specialization. Our bodies are built for endurance. We are, without a doubt, the greatest long-distance runners the planet has ever seen. Our long legs, our springy Achilles tendons, our ability to sweat and cool ourselves down efficiently. It all points to a body designed to run for hours and hours. A Neanderthal, with their short, stocky legs and heavy build, would have been a sprinter, not a marathoner. They would be powerful in short bursts, but they would overheat and tire out over a long distance. How does this help in a fight? A fight isn't always over in 30 seconds. If the modern human can survive the initial onslaught, the fight becomes a question of stamina. Can you wear the Neanderthal down? Keep moving, stay out of reach, make them chase you. Every minute the fight goes on, the Neanderthal's gas tank is emptying. Ours is still half full. Fatigue makes a coward of us all. It also makes you slow, sloppy, and weak. The longer the fight, the more it favors the Homo sapiens. And then there's our biggest physical advantage. It's so common we don't even think about it. It's our ability to throw. A modern human can throw an object with incredible speed and accuracy. A professional baseball pitcher can throw a ball 100 miles an hour. Even a child can skip a stone across a pond. This ability is unique to us. It comes from the specific anatomy of our shoulder. It's more loose and flexible than a Neanderthal's shoulder. It allows us to store and release elastic energy like a catapult. A Neanderthal's shoulder was built differently. It was more robust, more stable. It was designed for powerful underhand and overhand thrusting motions, like stabbing downwards with a spear. But it was not built for a high-speed, overhand throw. They could probably toss things, sure. But not with the velocity and precision we can. This is a complete game changer. A fight doesn't have to be hand-to-hand. The modern human can weaponize the environment. The fight starts at a distance, and the first weapon is a rock. A well-aimed rock to the head can end any fight, no matter how strong your opponent is. Imagine the scenario. The Neanderthal charges, the modern human, being quicker and lighter on his feet, backpedals. He scoops up a rock, he throws it, he hits the Neanderthal in the leg, or the chest. Like, it hurts. It slows him down, like the human picks up another rock. And the Neanderthal has to close the distance through a storm of projectiles. Before he even gets his hands on his opponent, he could be injured, dazed, or even unconscious. This is our superpower, the ability to fight from a distance. It's the foundation of all our projectile technology, from the sling to the bow and arrow to the intercontinental ballistic missile. It started with a rock, so now the physical matchup looks more even. The Neanderthal has overwhelming strength up close. The human has speed, endurance, and a deadly ranged attack. The outcome of the fight now depends heavily on the context. Where's the fight taking place? If it's in a locked phone booth, the Neanderthal wins 10 times out of 10. There's no room to move, no space to use speed or endurance. It's a pure power contest, and we lose that contest. He grabs you, he squeezes you, it's over. But what if the fight is in an open field or a forest? Now, the tables turn dramatically. The modern human can use his advantages. He can run. He can keep his distance, he can throw things. The Neanderthal's strength is useless if he can't get his hands on his opponent. He would be forced to chase, getting more and more tired, while being pelted with rocks. In that scenario, the modern human has a very good chance of winning. He can wear the Neanderthal down, injure him from afar, and wait for an opportunity. So far, we've only talked about the body, but the most important weapon in any fight is the mind. What about the brain? Neanderthals had big brains. In fact, on average, their cranial capacity was slightly larger than ours. For a long time, this confused scientists. If they had bigger brains, why weren't they the ones who built civilizations and went to the moon? The answer is that size isn't everything. It's about how the brain is organized. And Neanderthal brains were organized differently. By looking at the inside of their skulls, we can get a rough idea of the shape of their brain. Their skulls were long and low, like a football. Our skulls are more round and tall, like a basketball. This shape difference suggests that different parts of their brains were emphasized. Neanderthals had huge visual cortices. The back of their brain, dedicated to processing what they saw, was enormous. This makes sense. They lived in the low-light conditions of Ice Age Europe. They needed excellent vision to hunt and survive. But to make that part of the brain bigger, other parts might have been smaller. The parts of our brain that are unusually large are the parietal and temporal lobes, and especially the prefrontal cortex. These are the areas associated with things like complex language, abstract thought, long-term planning, and creativity. What does this mean for a fight? A Neanderthal was likely a brilliant tactical thinker in the moment. He could read an animal's movements, predict where to stab his spear, and react instantly to a threat. He was a master of his world, but he might have been less capable of improvisation. Less able to come up with a completely new, creative solution to a problem he had never seen before. A modern human brain is a creativity machine. We are constantly running simulations thinking, what if? What if I climb this tree? What if I build a simple trap? What if I use this vine to make a sling to throw my rock even faster? In a fight, this is a huge advantage. The Neanderthal might have a plan A charge and crush. But if plan A doesn't work, he might not be as good at coming up with a plan B on the fly. The modern human is always thinking 3 steps ahead. He's not just fighting the opponent, he's fighting the environment. He's looking for advantages, tools, and tricks. He might feign an injury. He might lead the Neanderthal into a dangerous area, like a patch of thorns or a slippery creek bed. This creativity is our defining trait. It's what allowed us to adapt to every environment on Earth. And in a one-on-one fight for survival, it's a formidable weapon. The ability to outthink your opponent is often more important than the ability to outpunch him. So we have 2 very different fighters. The Neanderthal is the bruiser. All power, aggression, and toughness. Built for overwhelming force in close quarters. The Homo sapiens is the strategist. Lighter, faster, and smarter. Built for endurance, ranged attacks, and creative problem solving. Now we have to address another big variable. Which modern human are we talking about? If you take an average 21st century person who works in an office, has never been in a real fight, and is in mediocre physical shape, and put him up against an average male Neanderthal in his prime. The Neanderthal's daily life was a constant struggle for survival. Our daily life involves avoiding paper cuts. The gap in physical conditioning, pain tolerance, and raw aggression would be immense. But what if we take a modern human who is an expert in violence, a professional MMA fighter, a special forces soldier, someone who has trained their entire life in the art of combat? This changes everything. A trained fighter knows how to use his body. He knows about leverage, angles, and weak points. He knows how to manage distance. He knows how to exploit an opponent's weaknesses. A trained fighter would look at the Neanderthal and see his weaknesses immediately. He's slow, he's ponderous, he probably leads with his head. His attacks are likely powerful but predictable charges and grabs. The fighter would use footwork to stay just out of reach. He would use kicks to attack the Neanderthal's legs, chopping at his base of support. A Neanderthal has never had his peroneal nerve kicked before. He wouldn't know what to do when his leg suddenly goes numb. The modern fighter would use hit and run tactics, jabs, kicks, and constant movement. He would never stand still and let the Neanderthal grab him. He would be using his brain, his strategy, and his training to dismantle the Neanderthal piece by piece from a safe distance. He would turn the Neanderthal's strength into a weakness, making him swing at empty air and waste his energy. In this scenario, the trained modern human probably wins. He has the physical tools, speed, endurance, and the mental software training, strategy to overcome the Neanderthal's raw power advantage. It will be a dangerous fight, for sure. One mistake, one lucky grab by the Neanderthal, and it's over. But the skilled human has a clear path to victory, so the answer to the question who would win is: in any scenario with a trained modern fighter, the smart money is on the human. But maybe this whole question is a bit silly. It frames our relationship with Neanderthals as one of pure conflict. 101 to the death. The reality was probably much more complicated and much more interesting. For thousands of years, we shared the same landscape. We were neighbors. Sometimes, we were probably rivals. We competed for the same food, the same caves, the same resources. There were almost certainly times when groups of Homo sapiens and groups of Neanderthals fought. And in a group fight, our advantages might have been even more pronounced. Better cooperation, better long-range weapons like the atlatl, a spear thrower, and more complex strategies could have allowed a smaller group of humans to defeat a larger group of Neanderthals. But we weren't always fighting. The proof is in our genes. We interbred. That means at some point, a Homo sapiens and a Neanderthal saw each other not as monsters or enemies, but as partners. They had families, they raised children. Those children, who were a mix of both groups, went on to have their own children. And that legacy lives on in us today, so why did we survive and they didn't? It probably wasn't because we could beat them in a fist fight. The real reason is likely a combination of many small advantages. Maybe our more creative brains allowed us to adapt better to the rapidly changing climate of the Ice Age. When their preferred big game animals disappeared, maybe we were better at figuring out how to catch rabbits and fish. Maybe our more complex language allowed us to form larger, more cohesive social groups. We could share information more effectively, plan for the future, and maintain trading networks over long distances. A group of 150 cooperating humans is a much more formidable force than 3 separate groups of 50 Neanderthals, who can't coordinate their actions. Maybe we were just better at having babies. If our birth rates were just slightly higher than theirs over thousands of years, we would eventually replace them, even without any direct conflict. The story of the Neanderthals' extinction is a sad one. They were a successful, intelligent, and resilient type of human who survived in a brutal world for hundreds of thousands of years. They weren't a failed experiment, they were a success story. Their story just happened to end. And ours continued. Thinking about a fight between one of us and one of them is a fascinating thought experiment. It forces us to look at our own strengths and weaknesses. It reminds us that our lean bodies, our strained shoulders, and our big creative brains are not defaults. They are specialized weapons honed by millions of years of evolution. The Neanderthal represents a different path of human evolution. A path that emphasized physical power and resilience in a cold, hard world. In a simple test of brute strength, they would likely be the victors. They were the champions of close quarters power. But we represent a different strategy, a strategy of endurance, cleverness, and cooperation. Our ancestors didn't survive by being the strongest. They survived by being the most adaptable. By being able to run down their prey, to kill from a distance, and to outthink their problems. So, who wins the fight? In the short term, in a cage, it's probably the Neanderthal. But in the long term, in the big, complicated fight for survival across a changing planet, the winner was us. And maybe that's the only fight that really matters.